Make it stop. Someone, please make it stop. The voice came from 3B, sharp, exhausted, and barely concealing its edge. By 9:43 p.m., the first-class cabin of Flight 861 had become a war zone of silk eye masks, noise-canceling headphones, and furrowed brows. But none of the luxury could drown out the relentless guttural cries of a little girl in 2A. Vivian Astor, CEO of Astor Equity and the reigning ice queen of Wall Street, sat perfectly composed beside the source of the chaos, her 6-year-old daughter, Lily. But that composure was fraying. Fast. Lily. "Please," Vivian whispered, brushing a damp strand of hair from the girl's flushed forehead. "You have to breathe, darling. In. Out, like Mommy showed you." The girl only screamed louder. Across the aisle, a man groaned. "Can someone give the nanny a raise or a parachute?" A stewardess rushed forward, nerves taut behind her trained smile. "Ma'am, perhaps we can bring a physician on board." "I am not seeking a diagnosis." Vivian cut in her tone, sharp but refined. "She's overstimulated. I know her patterns. She'll settle down." But she wouldn't. Not this time. Lily thrashed against the seatbelt. Her small fists pounded the armrest. Her feet kicked into the wall of the cabin like war drums. The crying wasn't just noise. It was felt in the chest like an alarm sounding in the rib cage of every passenger. Back in the technician's seat near the galley, Logan Carter sat quietly. In his Navy coveralls, no one looked twice at him. He wasn't a guest. He was the guy they'd flown in to inspect the cabin's internal panels before landing in Heathrow. He wasn't supposed to be here anymore, but he stayed. He always stayed when the crying started. Logan's eyes weren't on the seatbelt light. They were on the little girl with the tangle of hair and the eyes too wide to fight anymore. He slowly reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a battered silver watch. The glass was scratched. The second hand ticked unevenly. And around its rim, like it was meant to be, there was a small, smooth silver coin dented dulled by time but perfectly round. Logan held the coin between his fingers, then bent low and rolled it gently along the rim of the watch. Click. Clink, clink, click. A metallic rhythm, soft, circular, hypnotic. Lily froze. She didn't stop breathing, but she stopped crying. Her eyes tracked the motion, her chest hitching, then pausing. Her hands unclenched. For the first time in nearly an hour, the sound of desperation gave way to silence so sharp it sliced through the cabin. Vivian's head snapped toward the sound. "Who are you?" she asked. Logan didn't answer. Not yet. He walked forward slowly, calmly, like a man crossing into someone else's house with muddy boots but clean intentions. "I won't touch her," he said gently. "But if you let me sit near her, I think I can help." Vivian stared at him. Every cell in her body screamed no. But something else, something older than her title, her reputation, her armor, made her nod. "Sit." He did. Logan sat on the carpeted floor next to Lily's seat. He held the coin between his thumb and forefinger and rolled it again. Click, clink. Then he whispered, "You're safe now, little one. It's just the sky getting tired. That's what all the noise is." The sky taking a breath. Lily blinked. Her lip trembled, but the next scream never came. Instead, her small hand reached out and touched his watch, then the coin, then his calloused wrist. Vivian's voice was low, sharp. "How did you do that?" Logan didn't look at her. "I didn't," he said. "She did. She just needed something to follow. Something round. Something quiet. Are you a therapist?" "No, ma'am." "Doctor?" He shook his head. Then, what his answer was a whisper, but it carried through the hushed cabin like gospel. "I'm just a dad." 3 rows back, someone began to clap. Not loudly, just 2, 3 claps. Then it stopped. No one dared cheer in first class. But eyes softened, shoulders lowered, and the woman in 3B wept silently into her glass of champagne. Vivian turned visibly shaken. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "You shouldn't even be in this cabin," she said finally. Logan looked up straight into her eyes. "I know. But neither should pain. And yet, here it is." That made her flinch. There was something about the way he spoke, low, plain, unsharpened by ambition, that disarmed her far more than she wanted to admit. Logan looked down at Lily. She had curled into her seat, tiny fingers still brushing his sleeve. Her breathing had synchronized with his. "I'll go now," he whispered, starting to rise. But Lily whimpered just a sound, not a cry, and her hand clutched his jumpsuit sleeve like a rope in storm water. "No," Vivian said softly. "Stay, please." Logan froze. Not because of the command. Because of the please. That one word from a woman who had likely never begged for anything brought more tension to his throat than a decade of grief ever had. He sat back down, folding his legs under him like a mechanic under a stalled engine. Vivian leaned forward, watching Lily sleep, then shifted her gaze to Logan. "You said... you're just a dad." He nodded. "Where's your daughter now?" He swallowed, blinked once, then answered without blinking again. "She's not. Anymore." Silence fell again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was reverent. Vivian studied him like a riddle, but one she wasn't sure she wanted to solve. "Thank you," she said after a long pause. "Whatever you did, thank you." Logan looked down at the coin. He spun it once in his palm and smiled faintly. Sometimes all a kid needs is something old, something round, and someone who's listening. Vivian looked at her daughter, then at the janitor sitting on the floor in first class, and something strange, almost frightening, fluttered beneath her ribs. It wasn't fear, or anger, or even gratitude. It was the terrifying realization that for the first time in 6 years, she wasn't the one holding her daughter together. "She's still breathing in time with you?" Vivian's voice broke the silence like glass on marble, sharp, unintentional, but fragile. Logan looked down. Lily had nestled against the cushion, her small chest rising and falling with the slow rhythm of his own. Her fingers remained loosely curled around the cuff of his sleeve, as if releasing it might unravel the peace they'd found. "I know," he said softly. "She found the rhythm. Most kids do when they're given one." Vivian studied him, not the way one studies a man, but the way one searches for a seam in a locked door. "How did you know what to do? That coin, that breathing?" Logan hesitated. Then, with a careful slowness, he placed the silver coin on the armrest between them. It lay there, ordinary and weightless, and yet it shimmered with the gravity of grief. "She used to like the sound," he murmured. "My daughter, Emma." Vivian's posture stiffened slightly. She hadn't asked for a name. But now that she had it, she felt as though she owed something in return. How old was she? 6. Same age as Lily. He let the words sit in the space between them like a confession. She had a sensory disorder undiagnosed for too long. One night, she started crying like Lily did. Only louder, wilder. Her heart couldn't settle, and I didn't know why. I thought she just needed water, or sleep, or me to stop asking her to be quiet. He paused. The plane hummed around them, the white noise now a kind of backdrop for pain. By the time we got to the ER, it was too late. Vivian didn't speak. She couldn't. There was a lump in her throat she hadn't earned the right to swallow. Logan continued gently. "I kept that coin from her toy chest. It used to calm her just like that. The sound, the spin. Something about it gave her order when the world got too loud." He didn't cry. He didn't falter. He simply spoke like a man who'd repeated the story to himself 1,000 times just to remember the sound of her name. Vivian's voice was a whisper, strained. "And now you carry it everywhere." He looked down at the coin, then nodded. "No one listens to janitors. But coins, they still spin when you need them to." She wanted to ask a dozen questions about Emma, about the mother, about why a man like him spoke like a poet while dressed like a mechanic. But something in her told her not to interrogate this moment. It wasn't an interview. It was an offering. Instead, she said, "Lily hasn't let anyone touch her in 3 years. Not even me sometimes." Logan glanced at her surprised. "You," Vivian gave a tight smile. "I stopped being soft when I lost my husband. He was the warm one. I became function." Her fingers tapped absently against the champagne flute, empty now. "People call it strength. I think it's just a well-dressed kind of fear. Logan nodded like he understood exactly what that meant. She doesn't hate you, he said, watching Lily. She just doesn't know how to meet you where you are. The world sounds different to her. Vivian closed her eyes for a moment as if absorbing the truth required more than just listening, it required surrender. When she opened them again, her voice had changed. Thank you, she said quietly. You didn't have to help. I did, Logan replied, because I saw the look on your face. Vivian frowned, confused. What look? The look every parent wears the moment they realize love isn't always enough to fix it. Her breath caught. I know that look, he added. I wore it every night after Emma passed. I still do. Vivian turned toward the window, blinking away something that was dangerously close to tears. She didn't cry. Not in front of people, especially not strangers. But this man, this janitor with his watch and coin and quiet grief, had cracked something in her chest with words more precise than any scalpel. They sat in silence for a while, watching Lily sleep. Her face now peaceful, her tiny fingers still wrapped in trust. After a long pause, Logan said, She's stronger than you think. She just needs anchors, not instructions. Vivian glanced at him. You say that like it's obvious. He smiled faintly. To people who've been untethered. It is. Another silence. But this one was comfortable. Almost warm. Finally, she spoke again, more measured. Where are you going in London, if you don't mind me asking? Nowhere. Fancy, Logan replied. There's a non-profit that fixes HVAC systems for struggling schools. They asked me to check a few sites. I said yes, because, well, I've always believed the smallest rooms deserve the most attention. Vivian tilted her head. That's not how most people think. Maybe most people never clean the rooms where no one looked. She laughed, softly. The kind of laugh that slips past your guard before you can stop it. You're not what I expected, she said. Logan met her gaze. Neither are you. She blinked. You expected a cold, corporate machine, she asked, half joking. I expected someone who'd treat my boots like they dirtied her air, he replied, deadpan. Vivian smiled. It was slight, but it lingered. Logan reached for the coin, spinning it once more on the armrest. It danced in a slow circle, catching the overhead light. She'll remember this moment, he said. Vivian nodded. So will I. Lily stirred, turning in her seat, and her voice, a whisper so small it almost didn't exist, rose between them like a fragile ribbon. Don't go! Both adults looked down. Vivian's eyes widened. Logan leaned closer. I'm right here, sweetheart. The little girl smiled in her sleep, her fingers tightening around his wrist. Vivian exhaled a long breath, shaky, unsure, but full of something new. Something that almost felt like hope. Mr. Carter, she said, clearing her throat. When we land, would you consider riding with us just for the drive? Logan hesitated. He glanced at Lily, then back to Vivian. I don't belong in limousines, he said, half smiling. Neither do crying children, but here we are. He considered that, then nodded once. All right. Vivian leaned back. All right. Outside the window, the stars hung like punctuation marks in an unfinished sentence, and somewhere in the silence, two hearts that had once broken began to beat slowly, separately, but in time, in rhythm, like breath, like forgiveness, like the start of something neither of them was brave enough yet to name. She says she's not leaving the plane without the man with the coin. The flight attendant's voice was apologetic but amused as she leaned in toward Vivian, who stood stiffly beside the jet bridge. Behind her, the first-class passengers were already halfway to their chauffeurs and meetings. But Vivian Astor, one of the most powerful women in global finance, hadn't moved. She turned slowly to look at her daughter. Lily stood barefoot on the carpeted floor of the aircraft, her small hands balled into fists, her tiny face red with stubbornness. I mean it, the girl declared, planting her feet like a soldier. I'm not going anywhere without him. Vivian exhaled slowly. Lily. But the girl only crossed her arms. No. And then quieter. He makes the sky quieter. It was the kind of sentence that didn't belong to a 6-year-old. It belonged to someone older, someone who had fought storms no one else could see. Vivian rubbed her temple. She hadn't slept. Not really. Her mind was still rewinding the night looping Logan's voice as coin, the way Lily had stopped crying like someone had turned off a switch only he could reach. She turned to the flight attendant. "Where is he?" The woman gestured toward the last row. "Still helping the crew stow equipment. Said he'd catch a cab from baggage claim." Vivian didn't hesitate. She walked down the aisle with the authority of someone used to commanding boardrooms, but her voice when she reached him was quieter. "Mr. Carter." Logan stood rubbing the back of his neck. He looked like he hadn't expected to see her again. "Yes, ma'am. Lily refuses to disembark without you." A pause. His eyebrows raised amused. "She's got a strong will. She gets that from me," Vivian muttered. Then, softer. Would you consider riding with us just to the hotel? I'll have a car drop you wherever you need after." He hesitated. "She's had a hard year," Vivian added. "I won't pretend I understand why she trusts you, but I'm not going to break it." Logan studied her a moment, then nodded. 10 minutes later, Lily sat curled between them in the back of a sleek black Mercedes Maybach, still clutching Logan's watch like it was a compass. The coin now rested in her lap. She turned it over and over in her fingers. "Do you want it back?" she asked. Logan smiled. "It's yours now, but you have to promise to keep it spinning. Always," she said solemnly. Vivian watched them through the mirror, her mind a kaleidoscope of questions. The stillness in Lily, the calm, the man beside her who seemed to carry grief like a song he never stopped humming. "You're quiet," she said to Logan. He looked out the window. "Just taking in the city. Been a while since I've seen London from the inside of a car, and not an alley." Vivian blinked. "You've lived here, no? Just worked here, back when I was trying to make something of myself after the military. Odd jobs, kitchens, laundromats. It was the kind of season you survive, not remember." Her gaze softened. "And now I clean things," he said, smiling faintly. "It's funny, people think janitors just mop up spills. But we're usually the first to notice when something's about to fall apart." Vivian studied him. "Why didn't you say anything last night that you'd lost a child, that you knew what to do because you lived it?" He paused. "Because pain isn't a resume." That line hit her in the chest harder than she expected. She looked away, watching the skyline drift past. They arrived at the Astor Royal Hotel, a towering glass palace in the heart of London. The doorman opened the car door with a perfect bow. Guests turned their heads at the familiar face of Vivian Astor. But what they weren't expecting was the man in worn boots and a travel-stained jacket walking beside her holding the hand of her daughter like they belonged in the same picture. Inside the penthouse suite, the view stretched over Hyde Park like a painting. Lily ran to the window. Logan stood awkwardly near the entrance, clearly unsure whether to stay or turn back. Vivian poured a glass of water and handed it to him. "I assume you don't drink before 9 a.m., she said dryly. He chuckled. "I assume you do." A beat. Then they both smiled. She motioned to the plush chair across from hers. "Sit, please." He did. "I wanted to say thank you," she began, "not just for last night, for showing up." Logan tilted his head. "You'd be surprised how often people forget to do that." "No," she said, shaking her head. "Not people. Me." He didn't answer, but something shifted in his expression. "I've built a life," Vivian said slowly, "where nothing is allowed to break. No missed calls, no late reports, no wrong colors on a presentation slide. And yet, I missed what mattered." She looked toward Lily, who now sat quietly tracing the glass with the coin. "I'm not asking for absolution," she added. "Just understanding." Logan's voice was quiet. "Sometimes the strongest people aren't the ones who never break. They're the ones who keep showing up after they do." Vivian swallowed hard. "You know, she said I've been called 100 names in business. Ice Queen, Shark, Asset Assassin." He raised an eyebrow. "That one's creative, but I've never been called Mommy in a tone that didn't sound afraid." The admission fell heavy into the room. Logan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Then maybe he said, "This is the moment that changes." She looked at him, eyes wet but not breaking. "Why are you being so kind to me?" He didn't smile, didn't blink. "Because someone was once kind to me when I didn't deserve it," he said. "And because no child should have to teach their mother how to love gently. That should be learned long before the first cry." Vivian looked away, blinking fast. "Will you stay a little while longer?" she asked. Logan glanced at Lily, then back at her. "If you let me help carry something that's not mine." "Yeah, I'll stay." For the first time in years, Vivian Astor let her shoulders drop. Not in defeat, but in relief. And outside, across the London skyline, the clouds broke just enough to let the sun in. The suite was too quiet. Vivian stood barefoot on the cool marble coffee untouched on the counter, her blouse still unbuttoned at the collar, a rare breach in her perfectly ironed existence. Across the room, Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, a pack of colored pencils beside her sketching in slow, thoughtful movements. She hadn't said much that morning. No meltdowns, no resistance. Just quiet, like her soul had gone into deep water. Vivian had learned long ago that silence from her daughter wasn't always peace. Sometimes it was a storm just beginning. But this silence felt different. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" she asked softly. Lily didn't answer. Her pencil kept moving, curved lines, careful shapes, steady hands. After a while, she lifted the paper and turned it toward her mother. It was a watch. A round silver watch, and beside it a small spinning coin. Vivian's breath caught. She walked over slowly, kneeling beside Lily, taking the paper in her hands. There was no doubt it was Logan's watch detailed down to the scratch above the number 6. Lily had never drawn with such accuracy before. Not like this, but that wasn't what shook her. At the bottom of the page, written in childlike letters, was a phrase. "It sounds like when Mommy was happy." Vivian felt like her lungs had forgotten how to work. She looked at her daughter. "Lily." "What do you mean?" Lily pointed to the coin in the drawing. "That sound, the click. It's the same sound Daddy made. When I was in your belly." Vivian froze. For a long moment her mind couldn't catch up with her memory. Then it landed hard. Sebastian. At night, during her pregnancy, he used to tap a silver cufflink gently against her belly in rhythm. A game he made up saying it was so the baby would know his beat. He'd hum tap, sometimes even make up lullabies. She remembered thinking it was ridiculous. Beautiful, but ridiculous. She hadn't heard that sound in over 6 years. And now Lily, who had been preverbal until she was nearly 5, remembered it. Vivian's voice trembled. "You remember?" That Lily nodded. "I didn't know I did. But when Logan made the sound?" "I remembered." Vivian sat back, stunned. Her eyes blurred with something hot and unfamiliar. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected him to trigger this. Not a therapist, not a specialist. A janitor with a coin. She looked down at the drawing again and whispered, "I didn't remember either." Later that afternoon, Logan knocked softly before entering the suite, wiping his boots on the mat without being asked. He looked freshly showered, his hair still damp, wearing a clean shirt tucked into worn jeans. Vivian looked up from the dining table. Lily ran to him instantly. "I drew you something," she said proudly, thrusting the picture into his hands. Logan knelt to receive it like it was an award. "Wow," he said. "Is this me?" Lily pointed. "That's your watch. That's the coin. And that," she added, pointing to a small scribbled stick figure, "is the noise." He chuckled. "The noise, huh?" Vivian smiled faintly, watching them, then gestured toward the kitchen. "I made tea. Or coffee if you want something stronger." "Tea's fine," he said, following her. Once Lily had settled on the floor again, humming softly to herself, Vivian spoke low. "She remembers," she said, "the sound." Logan looked at her, listening. "She remembers my husband, a rhythm he used to make when I was pregnant. She was never supposed to remember, it was just something he did. But last night, your coin, your watch, it brought it back." Logan's gaze softened. "Memory isn't always in the brain," he said. "Sometimes it's stored in the skin, the breath, the heart." Vivian's eyes glistened. Why are you like this? He looked amused. Like what you speak like. No one I've ever met. Like grief taught you how to be kind. He didn't answer right away. Then it did. Vivian exhaled. I spent $500,000 on therapy for her Mr. Carter, private clinics, sensory programs. Not one of them reached her like you did with a coin you probably found in a sock drawer. He shook his head. No. I found it in a hospital room after they told me she was gone. The quiet between them now was no longer heavy, it was sacred. Vivian stepped closer, her voice low, private. I don't know what this is between us. I don't expect you to either. But I know I haven't felt this kind of safety in a long time. Not for Lily, not for myself. Logan's voice was even. Sometimes two broken things recognize each other. Vivian's eyes held his, and if they don't want to stay broken... He looked at Lily, then back to her. Then maybe they start putting the pieces together, one breath at a time. She blinked hard, then smiled. I'd like that. That night, as the city lights shimmered outside the window, Vivian tucked Lily into bed for the first time without a fight. Do you want me to stay with you? She asked. Lily shook her head. I'm okay now. I got the coin. Vivian leaned down, kissed her forehead, and whispered, You've got more than that. You've got everything you need, sweetheart. You just needed a reminder. Back in the living room, Logan was standing by the window looking out at London's skyline. Vivian approached slowly, holding 2 cups of herbal tea. Can I ask you something? She said, handing him one. Of course. When you looked at her on that plane, what did you see? He was quiet for a beat. Then I saw a storm and a lighthouse. Vivian tilted her head. At the same time, he nodded. The best people are both. She studied him. The man who shouldn't have belonged in her world, but did. I think, she said carefully, you've just described yourself. Logan didn't respond. He just smiled and sipped the tea like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment of quiet. And across the room on a piece of paper taped to the wall, the drawing of a watch and a coin fluttered gently in the air conditioning. Like a heartbeat. Like a memory that never really left. He's not supposed to be here. The words dropped like a stone between trimmed hedges and marble benches. Logan froze his hand, still gently guiding Lily's shoulder as she bent to examine a cluster of daisies near the koi pond. His boots were dusty. His shirt was plain. His very presence in the Astor Memorial Garden looked like a smudge on a clean canvas. The security guard in a navy blazer and earpiece stepped closer. I'll have to ask you to leave, sir. This garden is reserved for members of the Astor estate and authorized guests. Vivian turned slowly, sunglasses perched on her head, her linen coat fluttering in the wind. He's with me, she said, voice calm but flint sharp. The guard blinked. Of course, Miss Astor. He wasn't listed. Vivian took a step forward. Neither was my daughter's first real smile this week, but here it is. Lily looked up curious, her hand still holding Logan's. Vivian's gaze didn't waver. If his name needs to be added, do it. If anyone questions it again, have them call me directly. Or don't. And save us both the waste of time. The guard nodded quickly and retreated, radio crackling in his jacket. Logan stood still, one brow raised. I didn't mean to get you in trouble. Vivian turned to him, her face softer now. You didn't. You reminded me why I built this place. He glanced around at the serene garden, a space built in memory of her late husband, filled with curated wildflowers, stone plaques engraved with quotes in silence that could either heal or haunt. Looks like you built it to keep people out, he said. Vivian smiled wryly. That too. They walked further into the garden. Lily skipped ahead, tossing breadcrumbs to birds that didn't seem to mind her small, enthusiastic whispers. She's lighter, Logan said, watching her. She is, Vivian replied, and it scares me. Logan glanced over. Why? Because I'm afraid she'll forget. Her voice lowered. I'm afraid I'll forget. That one day we'll wake up and all of this will feel like a dream. That peace like this won't last. Logan stopped walking. Vivian. Peace isn't a guarantee. It's a choice you keep making every time the world tries to take it away. She met his eyes. You really believe that I have to. Otherwise, Emma died for nothing. Vivian's breath caught. She hadn't heard him say her name since the plane. She'd be proud of you, she said softly. Logan looked away. I hope so. A long silence passed between them. Wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere behind them, Lily laughed, a pure, unfiltered sound that turned even marble into something warm. Vivian took a seat on a low stone bench beneath a willow tree. Logan joined her, leaving space between them, but not too much. You know, she said this was Sebastian's favorite place. Your husband. She nodded. He used to say there are two kinds of people in the world, window people and wall people. Walls protect, windows connect. He said I was born a wall and taught myself to look like a window. Logan smiled faintly. And him, he was a skylight. He let everything in, even the storms. Especially the storms. She picked up a leaf, twirling it between her fingers. When he died, I built this garden as a fortress, something beautiful but unreachable, controlled. I never wanted anyone messy or real inside it. Logan looked around. Looks like you succeeded. Vivian let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Until today. He turned to her. You know what I see when I look at you? She raised a brow. I'm afraid to ask. I see someone who's exhausted from being polished. Someone who's worn armor so long she forgot what skin feels like. Vivian blinked. His words struck deeper than she expected. I don't know how to stop, she said honestly. You don't have to stop being strong, he said gently. You just have to stop thinking strength means doing it all alone. Their eyes locked. And just then, Lily came running back, breathless and bright-eyed. I found something. She held up a smooth, flat stone with a small heart etched into it, one of many hidden throughout the garden as part of Sebastian's original design. A reminder that love is always discoverable. Vivian took the stone and held it for a moment. Daddy used to hide these for you, she said softly. Lily nodded. Maybe Logan can hide one next time. Vivian looked at her daughter, then at the man beside her. And for the first time since Sebastian's funeral, she felt something she couldn't explain. A loosening. A letting go. As they walked back toward the entrance, Logan paused in front of a small plaque. Vivian watched him trace the inscription with his thumb. It read, Let no grief make you harder. Let it deepen you. That one's my favorite, she said. Logan nodded. Grief doesn't leave. It just becomes a room you learn to sit in without flinching. Vivian looked at him. You speak like someone who's walked through a lot of rooms. I have, he said. But I never imagined I'd be invited into one like this. She looked down at the stone still in her hand. Maybe this garden needs fewer walls, she murmured, and more windows. He smiled. Start with one. She turned toward the path and whispered, I already have. Outside the gates, the press hadn't noticed them yet. The black car waited in silence. Before getting in, Vivian paused. Logan. He turned. If I invited you back tomorrow, not as a favor, not as a necessity, just because I want to hear your voice in this place again, would you come? He didn't hesitate. Yes. And if I asked you to stop calling me ma'am, he grinned. That's pushing it. She laughed, full and free. From the back seat, Lily tapped on the window. Mommy, are you done talking, or is this another grown-up moment? Vivian smiled and opened the door. Just finished. As the car pulled away, Logan watched them disappear into traffic. He looked down at his palm. Lily had slipped him another drawing, this time a window with 2 stick figures inside. He traced the paper with his thumb. Some walls crumble. Some walls bloom. And some, if you're lucky, open just wide enough to let someone beautiful walk in. It started with a cough. Soft, dry, almost forgettable. But Logan heard it from across the suite like a siren. Vivian stood near the balcony sipping chamomile tea, her eyes scanning the skyline of London through glass. She didn't turn at first, just raised her voice slightly. Lily? Darling, I said no more juice tonight. Another cough, then silence, then a thud. Vivian spun. Lily. The girl sat crumpled on the floor near the velvet armchair, knees pulled to her chest, her small frame shivering. Her cheeks were flushed, her breath shallow. Oh, God, Vivian whispered, rushing to her. Logan was already moving faster than instinct. By the time Vivian reached her daughter, he was crouched beside Lily, one hand on her forehead, the other gently lifting her wrist to check the pulse. Vivian's voice shook. "I'll call the concierge. Get the doctor." "No time," Logan said firmly. "She's overheating. We need to bring her temp down now." He didn't shout, but his tone was made of steel wrapped in calm. Vivian backed away. Logan scooped Lily into his arms with the ease of a father who'd done it before. He carried her to the bed and placed her on top of the covers. "Bathroom," he said. "Washcloth. Cold water, not icy, just cold." Vivian vanished. Logan loosened Lily's collar, gently running the back of his knuckles along her cheek. "Hey, Firefly," he whispered. "I've seen tougher days. You've got this." Lily whimpered. "You want to hear about the lemonade monster?" Her eyelids fluttered. Vivian returned with the damp cloth. Logan took it, folding it into a neat square, and pressed it to Lily's forehead. "I used to tell this story to my daughter," he said softly, not looking at Vivian. Emma had a wild imagination. Swore there was a monster in the fridge that turned water into lemonade just to confuse people. Vivian blinked. "That's oddly specific." Logan smiled faintly. "Emma said it made the lemons dance first. That's how they got their juice." He reached into his pocket and, as if by magic, pulled out the silver coin. Vivian stared. "You keep it with you always." He rolled the coin slowly between his fingers. The sound, soft, metallic, rhythmic, was familiar now, calming. Lily's breathing began to even. Vivian sat on the edge of the bed, watching, helpless in the best possible way. "Why didn't you panic?" she asked. Logan didn't look at her. "Because I already did. Long time ago. Panic doesn't save lives. Presence does." Vivian's voice caught. "What happened to her?" "To Emma." He finally looked up. "She had a condition. One of those rare ones you read about in a medical journal no one finishes. Her nervous system couldn't regulate temperature well. One winter she spiked a fever out of nowhere. The doctors dismissed it as the flu." He paused. The coin stopped spinning. "I was holding her when her heart gave out. The silence in the room grew thick. I told myself I'd never let another child go without being heard," he said. "Even if it was just a cough." Vivian covered her mouth. Her fingers trembled. Logan looked at her. "You did everything right. She just needed a little help tonight. That doesn't make you weak, Vivian. It makes me human," she whispered. "No." He shook his head. "You were always human. You just stopped giving yourself permission to feel it." Vivian stood, her eyes filling. She walked to the window. Her shoulders were drawn tight like armor barely holding. "I thought building walls would keep Lily safe," she said. "That if I controlled everything, the schedule, the food, the lighting, she'd never fall apart. But the truth is, I'm the one who's terrified of crumbling." Logan approached her slowly. "You don't have to be unbreakable," he said. "You just have to be real." She turned to him. "I don't know how to do this. Not like you." He smiled, warm and tired. "I don't know either. I just show up. I listen. I mess up. Then I try again." A long pause. "I'm not offering a miracle," he added. "Just a pair of ears that won't run. A heart that's still learning but always open." Vivian's walls cracked. She looked down and her voice came out raw. "Do you think—" "She would have liked me, Emma." Logan studied her. "She would have loved you, fiercely, because she could always sense when someone was pretending to be okay." Vivian laughed through a sob. "Then she would have seen right through me." "Exactly." They both turned toward Lily. She was sleeping now, breathing softly, the fever fading. Vivian crossed the room and sat beside her daughter, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Would you stay?" she asked, eyes still on Lily. "Just until morning." Logan nodded. "Of course." "I don't mean for her," she said, voice low. "I mean for me." He pulled the armchair closer and sat down. "Then I'll be right here." The hours passed gently. The rain tapped against the glass like a lullaby. Logan dozed in the chair, the coin resting between his fingers. Vivian stayed curled beside her daughter, one hand holding Lily's, the other occasionally brushing her forehead. At some point in the early hours, Lily stirred and whispered, "Mommy, I'm here, baby. Can we keep the coin man?" Vivian smiled through tears. "We'll ask him in the morning," Logan, eyes closed, said softly, "Only if I come with it." Vivian didn't reply. She just leaned back, eyes toward the ceiling. The kind of silence that filled the room wasn't the kind that pressed, it was the kind that healed. Somewhere in the city, 1,000 stories raced and crashed. But inside this room, time slowed. A mother breathed again. A janitor remembered again. And a little girl slept soundly for the first time in years. No doctors, no therapy, no empire behind it. Just warmth, and a coin, and two people learning that being broken might be the bravest way to love again. The invitation arrived not through email, not by assistant, not with fanfare. Just a folded note slipped under Logan's hotel room door. Neat handwriting on cream paper. Come for tea. No expectations. Just breath and time. V. And an address scribbled below. Logan stared at it for a long time before folding it again and slipping it into his coat pocket. The glass house stood hidden behind the Astor Royal's East Wing, an old conservatory once reserved for private dignitaries. But now it bloomed with new life. Stepping inside was like walking into a memory someone had been brave enough to nurture. Strings of warm Edison bulbs wrapped around the metal frame overhead, casting amber light on the rows of indoor herbs. Rosemary, sage, mint, lemon balm. There were no candles, no silver cutlery, no butlers waiting in the wings. Just a small wooden table for two. A kettle steaming gently at its center. Ceramic cups. Slices of lemon. A glass jar of honey with a little wooden dipper. And Vivian. Not in a designer dress, not in heels. Just a soft, cream sweater, sleeves rolled to the elbows, her dark hair loosely tied back and her feet bare on the warm tile. Logan hesitated at the entrance. "You changed the world tonight," he said softly. She smiled, eyes tired but open. "No. Tonight I just watered some thyme." They sat across from each other in silence at first. It wasn't awkward, it was intentional, like both were letting the space breathe before they did. "I didn't know you were a tea drinker," Logan said finally. Vivian poured gently, watching the steam rise between them. "I'm not. But I remember my husband used to say tea was honesty in a cup. Coffee's for deals, wine's for masks. Tea is for truth." Logan nodded. "Then I should warn you, I'm more of a lemon and tap water guy." "Good," she said. "Then neither of us are pretending." The tea was simple, fragrant. The warmth sank into the bones. And slowly, so did the words. Vivian wrapped her hands around her cup. "I never thought I'd be here." "In a greenhouse?" Logan asked. "In a moment where I didn't have to lead," she said. "Didn't have to be sharp or smart or impenetrable. Just sitting, with someone who sees me before I've spoken." Logan's voice was quiet. "You've always been seen. The world just confused your armor with your soul." Vivian blinked visibly, shaken by the gentleness in his tone. "Do you know," she whispered, "how exhausting it is to always be the strongest person in the room?" He nodded. "Do you know how exhausting it is to never be allowed into that room?" That silenced them both for a moment. Then she spoke, eyes low. "If I weren't Vivian Astor, if I were just someone else, anyone else, would you look at me the same way?" Logan leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Vivian, I never looked at you as an Astor. Then, how I saw a woman cradling her daughter's fear like it was her own heartbeat. I saw someone who didn't scream when the world whispered she was failing. You didn't break. You bent. You trembled. But you never broke." She exhaled shakily. "Sometimes I wonder if being soft again would cost me everything I've built." Then maybe Logan said, "You've been building in the wrong direction." That landed. Outside, wind rustled the leaves against the glass. Inside, only the quiet clink of ceramic and the hush of breath between words. Vivian stood and crossed to a planter box in the corner. She snipped a few sprigs of lavender, returned to the table, and placed one on his saucer. "For calm," she said, "though I suspect you're already familiar with that." Logan smiled. It's not calm I have, it's experience in chaos. She sat down again, suddenly nervous. I've had suitors, she said. Investors, royalty, even a film director once. All of them tried to conquer me. You confuse me, because I don't try, no. Because you offer nothing. And somehow that gives me everything. Logan's brow furrowed. I don't understand. Vivian's voice dropped barely audible. You didn't come for my money, or my title, or Lily's story. You came with a coin and a breath and changed everything. He met her gaze, his own voice thickening. And you let me in. That might be the bravest thing I've seen in years. They didn't hold hands, they didn't kiss, they didn't make promises. But as they sat there, cups, empty night deepening around them, the warmth didn't leave. Logan looked at her soft and certain. You know, people think healing is a destination, but it's not. It's a rhythm, a coin spinning, a breath shared, a choice made again and again. Vivian nodded slowly. Then, maybe tonight, was my first step. He stood gently, placing the lavender sprig in his pocket. I'll walk you back, he offered. Vivian shook her head. No need. Stay. This place suits you. He paused, hand on the door. So does the quiet. And yet, she added, it's never felt so full. He left without another word. She remained, fingers tracing the rim of her cup, eyes misted, not with regret, but with hope blooming slow. For the first time in years, the CEO didn't check her phone. She just listened. To the sound of lavender brushing glass, and the echo of a janitor's words still warming the air. It started with a chime. Vivian's phone buzzed across the breakfast table, its screen alight with hundreds of notifications. At first she thought it was a board emergency, or worse, a market crash. But when she tapped the screen, it wasn't stocks or scandals. It was them. A video. Just over 2 minutes. Title, Janitor Saves Heiress's Daughter with a Coin Views 2.7 million. Climbing. She clicked play. The footage, grainy but sharp enough, began with chaos. A child screaming mid-flight. Passengers shifting uncomfortably. Then, Logan's calm hands, the rhythmic spin of the silver coin, his palm resting gently on Lily's back. The moment silence fell on the cabin was pure cinematic magic. So raw, so intimate, so no longer theirs. Vivian gripped the edge of the table, and then came the storm. By noon, the media had caught the scent. CEO and single dad, a mile-high connection from mop to miracle. Who is Logan Carter? Billion-dollar heiress. Falls for maintenance man. The last one stung the most. She'd lived with headlines her whole life. She'd survived hostile takeovers and boardroom betrayals, but this felt like an ambush on something sacred, something still forming. She didn't call Logan. She didn't know what to say. Instead, she buried herself in meetings, her face cold and unreadable even as her heart raced behind her ribs like a caged thing. Meanwhile, Logan stood in front of a convenience store, phone in hand, watching the same video. He didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't even blink, but his jaw clenched, hard. He scrolled past the comments. This man deserves a medal. He's the father I wish I had. She better not screw this up. And then, of course she's slumming it for PR. Bet it's a stunt. Janitors don't date CEOs. Wake up. The cold returned to his chest like a tide. He didn't check for messages. He already knew. There wouldn't be one. Not from her. That evening, Vivian stood in the boardroom staring down a semicircle of stone-faced executives. All men, all polished, all older. At the head, Roland Vexler, chairman of Astor Global. His voice was buttered with disdain. This is not just about optics, Vivian. It's about liability, exposure, risk. You've entangled the Astor brand in a public soap opera. I haven't made any statement, she said calmly. And that's precisely the problem, Roland countered. Your silence implies permission. You're fueling tabloid wildfire by doing nothing. Another voice chimed in. Is it true you allowed this man into your home? Around your daughter, off the record, of course. Vivian's voice was ice. He saved her, when no one else could. So did the EMTs. You didn't marry them." She didn't flinch, but the words left a bruise. "You want me to denounce him?" she asked. "We want you to protect the company. And if I refuse—" A beat of silence. Roland leaned back, folding his hands. "Then the board will consider whether you're still the best face for the Astor legacy." Back at his modest flat in East London, Logan sat on the edge of the bedbag, already half-packed. He stared at the old watch in his palm. The coin wasn't spinning anymore. His phone vibrated. He picked it up one last time. No missed calls, no messages, not from her. Just a news alert: Vivian Astor. Declines to comment on viral janitor video. No defense, no acknowledgement, just distance. He closed his eyes, not out of anger, but because he'd seen this script before. People like him were good enough to fix things, to save the day, but never enough to stay. Vivian returned home just past midnight. She walked into Lily's room expecting to find her asleep. Instead, Lily was awake, curled against her stuffed bear, eyes wide. "Mama," she whispered. "Yes, darling. Why didn't you call him Vivian?" Froze. "Who?" Mr. Logan, Lily said softly. "He said he'd come back. When I got better." Vivian sat on the edge of the bed. Her voice cracked. "He might not come back, sweetheart. Did you tell him not to?" Vivian looked away. "I didn't say anything." Lily sat up. Her voice, though small, cut like a blade. Then, how would he know he still matters? That night, Vivian didn't sleep. She wandered the house barefoot, passing room after room, filled with art antique silence. At 2:17 a.m., she stood in her garden barefoot in the cold dew, staring up at the stars. "I was trying to protect you," she whispered into the sky. But the stars didn't answer, because maybe, just maybe, silence wasn't protection. It was betrayal. She looked down at her hands. Hands that had built empires, signed billion-dollar deals, held her daughter through nightmares, but hadn't held the one hand that reached for hers when it truly mattered. At 4:42 a.m., Logan left for the airport. He left no note, no message, only a folded lavender sprig on the windowsill, and a suitcase filled with quiet. The silence in the penthouse was no longer luxurious, it was suffocating. Vivian sat on the edge of her bed, elbows on her knees, forehead resting on clasped hands still dressed in yesterday's cashmere. Her phone lay untouched beside her, its battery long dead. The city skyline beyond the glass shimmered like a jewel box, one she no longer cared to open. She hadn't spoken to anyone outside her daughter in days. The board had gone quiet, their silence more damning than any reprimand. The press had found new bait, but the ache inside her chest that lingered. She glanced toward the hallway where Lily's giggles used to echo. Now all she heard was the quiet thump of a child drawing alone. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor of her room, surrounded by crayons, stickers, and silence. She was sketching something with intense focus, her tongue poking slightly out like Logan used to do when he was fixing the tray table on the plane. She drew the old watch first, then the silver coin, and finally a small figure with stubbled cheeks and kind eyes. Next to it, she scribbled, "Mr. Logan. He listens." Vivian stood at the doorway, unnoticed, her throat tight. "Lily," she said softly. Her daughter looked up. "I'm making a card." "For who?" Lily paused. "For the man who made my heart not scared anymore." Vivian's composure fractured. She stepped inside, kneeling beside her daughter. "Sweetheart, he didn't leave because of you." Lily didn't look up. "I know. He left because you didn't say anything." Vivian closed her eyes. Sometimes, she whispered, grown-ups think silence is safer than truth. Lily handed her the card. "Then maybe you should be a little braver." That night, Vivian opened her laptop for the first time in days. She clicked through security footage not from airports or business meetings, but from the quiet corners of her own home. Small moments the system automatically saved. Background recordings, the kind no one ever watches, unless they're searching for something they lost. She found them. Logan, in the kitchen, gently handing Lily a lemon slice and teaching her how to make it smile before she tasted it. Logan, kneeling beside her in the garden, showing her how to breathe with the leaves, in with the wind, out with the worry. Logan carrying her upstairs when she fell asleep mid-story whispering, "Dream, soft little one." Vivian sat in the dark screen, glowing heart raw. He had been here quietly, deeply present, and she had let him go without a word. She stood before her mirror at 3:12 a.m., not the gilded one in her dressing room, no makeup, no posture, just her, bare, human, tired. She reached up and wiped a line of moisture from her cheek, not from a tear, but from a memory. The day Logan had said, "I don't listen with my ears. I listen with what broke in me." Her voice was barely a whisper now, and I stayed silent with what broke in me. She stared into her reflection. Not the CEO, not the widow, not the heiress, just a woman, a mother, alone. The next morning, Vivian walked through the garden Logan had once tended, the one where he planted lavender clippings without being asked, where Lily first laughed again after the flight. She bent down, brushing her fingers across a small bloom. It was still alive. Barely, but alive. Something bloomed in her chest, too. Resolve. She stood up, heart pounding, not with fear, but with direction. It was time. Vivian returned to Lily's room with a travel bag and a promise. "We're going on a little trip." Lily's eyes lit up, where Vivian smiled. To find someone. And this time, "I'll do the talking." Lily reached for her sketch pad. "I need to bring my card." Vivian kissed the top of her head. "Bring your courage too. I'll bring mine." Scene break. Interlude. Voiceover style. Suggestion for pacing and emotional tone. There are mirrors we avoid, because they don't reflect the version of ourselves we worked so hard to build. But, sometimes, the truth shows up not in glass, but in the eyes of a child, in the quiet absence of someone who used to be there, and the only way to fix a broken reflection is to stop pretending you're whole. 2 hours later, a car pulled away from Astor Royale. In the back seat, a small girl clutching a hand-drawn card with a watch on it. Beside her, a woman holding nothing, except the hope that love might forgive silence. It was raining in New York, not the kind that soaked your clothes, but the kind that soaked your soul. Gray, steady, indifferent. Vivian stood outside Hangar B-12 at JFK's maintenance yard, her heels planted on oil-stained pavement, her breath visible in the morning chill. She wore no makeup, no designer coat, no security detail, just a navy sweater, jeans, and a scarf that Lily insisted she wear. Inside her coat pocket was something small, metal, heavy in a way only the heart understands. She could see him through the glass, bent over a tool cart, sleeves rolled up, grease on his forearm. The fluorescent lights buzzed above his head like the world didn't know what was about to shift. Logan, the man who saved her daughter. The man who broke something open in her without even trying. Beside her, Lily held a plastic folder with stickers on it. Her ponytail bobbed as she shifted from foot to foot. "Do you think he still likes us?" she asked, tugging Vivian's sleeve. Vivian knelt to her daughter's height, smoothing a flyaway hair behind her ear. "I think," she said slowly, "he never stopped. I think I just didn't give him a reason to stay." Lily nodded, serious as a judge. "Then we give him one." Inside the hangar, Logan wiped his hands on a rag and checked his watch, the cheap one they gave out with the uniforms. Not that it mattered. Time had moved strangely these past 10 days. It stretched and collapsed like lungs trying to remember how to breathe. He hadn't slept. Not truly. He'd gone back to working nights. It was easier to disappear in the quiet, until today. Some presence made him glance up. And there she was, through the glass door, so still, so very there. Vivian, and Lily beside her waving with that shy hope children wear like armor. His body locked. For a full 5 seconds he didn't breathe. Then slowly he set the rag down, walked to the door, and opened it. The sound of the rain softened. Vivian looked up at him, and for the first time her voice trembled not from fear, but from honesty. "I don't have a speech," she said. "Good," he replied. "I don't have time for speeches." Lily giggled. "We brought a card." She held it out, arms fully extended. He crouched to take it. The front was drawn in thick crayon, a clock, a silver coin, and a little girl holding hands with a tall man. Inside scrawled in uneven print, "Thank you for making my heart brave." Logan's throat tightened. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "You deserve more than this," Vivian said. "But I'm starting with the truth." He stood, searching her face. She didn't flinch. "I thought if I stayed silent," she continued, "I could protect you, but I wasn't protecting anyone. I was just scared. Scared of letting someone truly see me." He didn't speak, so she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the watch, the same one that once quieted an entire airplane. "I wound it," she said, "but it doesn't tick anymore. Maybe it just needs someone who knows how to listen." She placed it gently in his hand. "And I don't know how to roll a coin or count breaths. I only know that you made my daughter feel safe, and you made me feel alive again." Logan looked down at the watch. His thumb brushed its cracked glass. "I kept thinking," she added, voice breaking, "that love was supposed to look like fireworks. But it's not. It's a heartbeat. Soft, steady, unseen." She took a small step closer. "I didn't come here to fix anything. I came to ask if I can learn, with you, together." Lily ran up and hugged his legs. Logan dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around her, holding on like he never wanted to let go. Then slowly, he looked up at Vivian. "You really mean that?" he asked, voice hoarse. She smiled through tears. "I didn't cross an ocean to be polite," he chuckled, then nodded just once like something inside him exhaled. And in that moment something ancient and beautiful happened between them. Not a kiss, not a declaration, just eyes meeting, and understanding blooming where silence once grew. They sat on the edge of the hangar legs, swinging, watching the rain slow to a mist. Logan turned the broken watch over in his hand. "You know," he said quietly, "this was my grandfather's. He used to say time doesn't fix things, people do." Vivian leaned her head against his shoulder. Then maybe she whispered, "We give time a little help." Lily was drawing again, this time on a shipping tag with a borrowed Sharpie. "What are you making?" Logan asked. She held it up proudly. It read, "This way to where hearts get better." Logan grinned. Vivian laughed softly, and for the first time in years, the hangar felt like a home. The sign above the entrance was made of reclaimed oak, smooth and pale, carved with quiet dignity. Heartline Center, where every heartbeat is heard. Children laughed inside. Real laughter, the kind that didn't have to be earned, only welcomed. Vivian stood just beyond the gate holding Lily's small hand. Her daughter's curls bounced as she skipped, holding a drawing in the other hand, a sketch of a clock, a coin, and 3 hearts joined by a thread of silver. "Can I hang it in my classroom, Mommy?" Lily asked. Vivian crouched beside her, brushing her thumb across the page. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "you made that classroom." Across the courtyard, Logan tightened the final bolt on a sensory swing set. His sleeves were rolled again. His hands, still strong, still weathered, moved with quiet care. This wasn't the same man who boarded a plane to fix a broken panel 6 months ago. This was a father, a partner, a builder of second chances. And today, the world had shown up to witness it. The courtyard buzzed with reporters, board members, educators, and volunteers, not just for Vivian Astor, the billionaire philanthropist, but for the janitor who taught her how to feel again. Cameras flashed, microphones hovered, and, for once, Logan didn't shy away. He stood at the podium beside Vivian in a simple navy button-up tucked into jeans that bore the mark of real work. A silver coin sat in his palm as he spoke. "I was once told," Logan began, his voice clear, "that time doesn't fix things. People do." He paused, looked at Lily in the front row, bouncing with pride, then at Vivian, who gave him a soft, steady nod. "So we started with one heartbeat, then another, then a classroom, and now a center." He held up the coin, letting it catch the afternoon light. "Sometimes it's not about having the right words. It's about showing up with both hands open. One to hold the wound, and one to build the bridge." The crowd was silent. Then applause rippled, not thunderous, but warm, human, real. Vivian stepped forward, her tone calm, grounded, transformed. When we started this, she said, people asked why a janitor was at the table. She smiled gently. Today, I want to ask a different question. Why did it take so long for us to listen to the ones who already knew how to heal? There was no branding behind her, no champagne tower. Just a wall behind the stage painted by the children with bright colors forming one image, a clock cracked, but beating, and underneath, "We hear you." After the ceremony, Vivian and Logan walked slowly through the garden path behind the center, now quiet, bathed in late afternoon sunlight. Bees hummed around the lavender. Wind chimes sang faintly. They didn't speak for a long time. Then Logan said, "You built something beautiful." Vivian shook her head. "We built it. I had walls. You had windows." He smiled. "You still wear that scarf." She touched the edge of the wool scarf Lily had picked for her on the day they returned to New York. "I think I keep it to remind me. Softness doesn't mean weakness." Logan reached into his pocket and took out the old watch. It ticked. Steady. Soft. Alive. She gasped. "You fixed it." "No," he replied. "It just started ticking again. Maybe it needed to be heard too." Vivian stared at the little second hand moving with quiet determination. "It sounds like a lullaby," she whispered. Logan placed the watch into her hand, folding her fingers around it. "No," he said. "You sound like a lullaby now." She blinked away tears. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to think love had to be loud, visible, grand, disruptive." He tilted his head. "And now I think love is the sound of a clock that forgot how to beat. Remembering it can." They walked to the back bench where Lily had set up a tea table with 2 paper cups of warm apple cider. She wore a construction helmet too big for her head and a badge that read Junior Director of Heart Hugs. "Today's special is cinnamon," she announced proudly. Logan laughed. "Guess I better tip well." They sat, paper cups warming their hands. Vivian leaned her head on Logan's shoulder. He didn't move, didn't even blink, just let her be there. "Do you miss her?" she asked, almost afraid of the answer. Logan didn't pretend to misunderstand. "Every day," he said, "but not with pain anymore. Now it's like the way a song ends, quiet but still playing in your memory." Vivian closed her eyes. "I hope I can help you carry her." He took her hand. "You already have." As the sun dipped below the garden wall, golden light filtered through the old oak trees, dancing over their joined hands, the ticking watch and Lily's wild crayon masterpiece now pinned on the garden fence. Inside, a child struck a wind chime by mistake. The sound echoed clear, unexpected, beautiful, and somewhere beneath that sound was a heartbeat. Soft, steady, unseen, but heard, at last. And sometimes the softest sound changes everything. A coin rolling gently on a watch. A breath shared in silence. A heart learning how to beat again. If this story touched something in you, maybe a memory, maybe a hope, we'd love to hear it. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city, your state, or your country in the comments. We read every single one. If you believe the world needs more stories like this, stories about healing, second chances, and love that listens, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter, from all of us behind the scenes and from our hearts to yours. Thank you for watching. You are never forgotten. You are always heard.